And we're joined by Ulrike Franke, Senior Policy Fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations think tank. Thanks for speaking with us here on France 24.
It's my pleasure.
First off, your reaction to, well, the events of the last 24 hours. Now this news, first reported by the Financial Times, that on Thursday at the Berlin Air Show, there's going to be this big unveiling of a project that brings together Airbus and 7 German firms.
Yeah, that's interesting. So first of all, the announcement that this project was canceled, or rather the fighter jet part of the fighter jet program was canceled, that really wasn't a surprise to anybody. In fact, we had been waiting for this announcement at the very least since last November, so we knew that this was coming. I have been a little bit frustrated by the fact of how it was announced. I was kind of hoping that they were taking so much time for the announcement because they were working on alternatives and that they could immediately kind of present alternatives. That didn't seem to be the case. Now there is indeed this new idea of a German-led project. Honestly, at this point, for me, this isn't yet a done deal. This is one of the options, as the German defense minister just said. There were others, working with other Europeans, buying American. We'll see. So I don't think that this German project, German-led project, is necessarily what Germany is going to go for. But we'll see, because now, both France and Germany, and indeed also Spain, which was also part of this project, they will need to find some kind of alternative to this aircraft, which won't fly after all.
Ulrike Franke, there's something slightly baffling in all of this. You heard that clip of the German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, saying that the French company Dassault, the one that makes the Rafale fighter jets, was, quote, quite difficult to deal with. You heard that in the report. You know what? French officers who are in the know have told me exactly the same thing. They too feel as though Dassault is part of the problem. So if French and German military minds agree, why can't they agree on a common fighter jet project? What is it about Dassault?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I do agree that Dassault and their CEO, Éric Trappier, did not play the most constructive role from what I heard. Dassault really wanted the leadership, the full leadership of the fighter jet program. They were given the lead, so that was something that was already decided, but apparently they really wanted to kind of decide everything and really not involve the other partners pretty much at all. It is, however, a little bit too easy to just kind of blame Dassault as if, neither the French or the German state had any kind of say in this. That's not quite right. I think there really was a design flaw in the way how FCAS was designed. It did put together 2 big competitors, so Dassault on the French side and Airbus on the German side, and they just never really had the incentive to properly work together, to actually share intellectual property, to share expertise, because they were worried, or Dassault indeed was worried, that Airbus would, to put it bluntly, just kind of run away with this expertise eventually and then become an even better competitor. So I think this was a design flaw. And so as much as I understand that indeed, apparently Dassault isn't the easiest company to work with, it's definitely too easy to just kind of put the blame on them. There were other issues as well, and somehow we just couldn't make this work, which is a shame, but I'm honestly a little bit happy that now at least this is over and we can move on to something that hopefully works.
Are big, expensive fighter jets passé now? Is that one of the lessons of the war in Ukraine?
I wouldn't go so far. So I've been working on drones and uncrewed systems for really, well over a decade. So I know this field well, and I do appreciate the importance of drones going forward. However, I think it is honestly a little bit too early to say that crewed systems are passé, that they have become obsolete. Obviously, we don't know, and it would make sense for any kind of future fighter jet to maybe be optionally crewed, optionally manned, so that they can be flown remotely or indeed autonomously, but also can have a human being in the cockpit, because there's still situations and moments where you may want to have this human being in the cockpit. But you are right that, this system was started in 2017. that's actually quite a long time ago. And the drone technology has changed. The war in Ukraine has happened, which has changed the things we kind of learned and knew about warfare, but also has changed kind of the approach to European security and defense more broadly. And so I guess to some extent, this project was a little bit of a project of another era, and it just didn't fit neither really the French nor the German interests. And that's also one of the reasons why it couldn't be continued.
Okay, so the French and the Germans, they need to scale up in a hurry, particularly when you heard Boris Pistorius there saying the only option we'd have otherwise is to buy American. So how can they scale up in a hurry, and do they need to do it together?
Yeah, so Germany and France as well, but Germany has a few options. Indeed, for Germany, it is an option to just buy American. Germany is already buying the F-35. In fact, they're buying 35 F-35s in order to ensure the delivery of US nuclear weapons in the case of a NATO nuclear sharing operation. So it could just add more of those, but of course these are rather expensive. It could also work with other Europeans. So I think it's worth mentioning that there is a competing European project. It's called GCAP. This is the British, Italian, and Japanese project. And this was always seen as a bit of a competitor to FCAS, and now it is the surviving project, if you want to say that like that. And so Germany, or indeed France, could look to join that project if they want us. This is a question. Or indeed, as we just discussed, there is a German-only or French-only option. So it's not as if buying from the Americans is the only option. And indeed, I mean, France doesn't want to buy American. I think this is rather obvious. Spain actually recently decided against buying the F-35, so that's not exactly something they want to do either. So this is more for Germany. And even the Germans, I mean, the whole idea of recent years was all about European sovereignty. It was about becoming less dependent on the United States. So I think everybody now is really kind of trying to come up with a European option. Can this be done fast? I mean, we did just lose 9 years. There was research done, and it's not completely lost, but still, we lost them in this project. So we now need to move faster than before. But I think this is still doable for the timeline 2040, 2045, which was the original FCAS timeline.
I remember 3 decades ago, there was that European Corps that marched on the Champs-Élysées on Bastille Day. There was the idea that France and Germany would move closer together on military issues. Why hasn't it materialized?
I don't think it's quite fair to say because this project failed, now kind of Franco-German cooperation hasn't materialized. Because in fact, there is quite a lot of Franco-German and a lot of European cooperation on defense and security. There's a Franco-German brigade, although that also has its problem.
But it pales in comparison, Ulrike, you'll agree, it pales in comparison when you look at France and the UK, who work much closely together.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe, I mean, there are some partnerships that work better than others, but honestly, the Franco-German relationship remains strong. There's the tank project, FCAS, the cloud element is going to continue. There is the nuclear element. I'm sure you've reported on that, kind of France opening up its nuclear umbrella a little bit more, including to Germany. So this was a flagship project, no question about it. This was a flagship project both for Franco-German cooperation and for European defense. And the fact that it has now failed, at least in part, but in big parts, is bad news for European defense and Franco-German cooperation. However, I would also say that, honestly, this was such a problematic issue for the last few years that maybe it is even better for Franco-German cooperation that they've now finished this and that they can now move on. And they don't even have a choice. You know, France and Germany are the two big powers in the European Union. They have to work together. They actually usually want to work together. This is a setback, but it's not the end of this. And also on defense cooperation, there will be other projects. It is what it is. It's not great, but, you know, let's move on.
All right, the glass half full, according to Ulrike Franke. Many thanks for joining us there.